Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to this week's Kaizen Central.
You're on mute, Nick.
I'm not.
I can hear you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Can you please nod if you can hear me?
I can't hear you. Oh, is it me? It's no.
Now, that's a way to get me panicking at the start of a meeting to tell me that nobody can hear me.
Sorry.
Anyway, thanks, Angela. Greetings, everybody. Lovely to see you all. And congratulations again to Barry, who seems to be the most profiled SME in the history of British media at the moment, certainly in terms of the concentration of stories about Playdale recently. Excellent, great one, flying the flag. And I'd like to warmly welcome Paul Stead, our speaker for this evening. We've probably got a couple of minutes just to allow some people to get going before the actual presentation begins. Because I know that Paul's got some very interesting stuff to show you, and I really would like everybody to have a good crack. But having said that, I think we've got a quorum. Yes, we have a quorum. Okay, Paul, welcome. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I've known Paul for, gosh, 4 or 5 years now. And he has always struck me as one of the most original thinkers among all the people I know in business and manufacturing. And I think you'll be quite intrigued and amazed at some of the pictures he's going to show you. Paul, I'm going to hand over to you. We're going to talk about design and, most importantly, design thinking and how it pertains to your business. I'm going to mute myself, shut up, and hand over to Paul.
Okay. Well, look, thank you so much, Nick, and thank you all for the opportunity to have a brief chat. And I guess I just wanted to, because I've met a couple of you. I think I've met Angela, I've met various other people through the manufacturer and through our historical links, Nick. But I just thought it would be worth giving you a brief gallop through some of the things I've done, because it kind of it's very much defined me. And as you can tell, I'm a Yorkshireman. And if you don't know that, you know that now, because they tell you within the first 2 minutes of speaking. So this is me at the age of 8. And my dad is 92 now. He was a woodwork teacher, but every holiday he used to employ me in slave labor building things. So I started at a very early age of building houses. And I think this is actually a block of garages we built back in 1966. So you can see I started young. He wanted me to follow in the family's footsteps and go be a teacher. And I got in at Loughborough University to be a woodwork teacher and hated it. Absolutely hated it. So I broke his heart. I changed my degree and went into design. And from there, I did a master's at High Wycombe in design of furniture. But during my master's, I actually specialized in transport furniture. And my first job, was a company called Fitch, which had just won Terminal 4 at Heathrow. And I was very fortunate to work with one of the directors there, working on the check-in desks and the seating. And I soon found my groove in there, because I'd trained, my dad taught me how to do drawing, engineering drawing, technical drawings, and actually how to make things. So I very quickly rose through the ranks, and you can see some of the projects I worked on there. But phenomenal growth of design then. I started at Fitch in 1980. Straight out of my MA, it was about 35 people. When I left, it was 400 people, and I was running everything from massive projects at Reading Station through to whole programs around the world. But my boss there was an amazing guy called Peter Crutch, and he unfortunately retired in '87. He hurt his back, and I got a new boss. And as it was, the guy was not a very nice boss, and I think a lot of control from the top down. He took away a lot of freedom, and I ended up resigning and actually left Fitch on my 30th birthday to start a company called PSD, Paul Stead Design. And that was out of my front room in Teddington. My mum gave me £2,000 to start, and we worked day and night out of the front room with a couple of people. we went through some really bad patches, but my big break was getting on an airplane, going to Chicago and meeting the head of Motorola. And at the time, you can see the first handset we designed for Motorola, but there were big bags, if you remember those, that you used to bolt in, take off your shoulder and put in the back of the car. And we helped Motorola and we talked to them about how mobile phones at this time, very early in 88, 89, were going to be consumer items. And they believed us. And because we worked with Motorola, then we worked with Nokia, we worked with Ericsson, we worked with all the mobile phone companies, and people left. A guy called Hugh Brogan, who was pretty seminal to my development as well, left and started a company called Sendo in the Midlands. And he asked me to get involved with there and become, really lead the design charge there. So my business grew from me in the front room to 2000, the year 2000. We had 100 people working out of a studio in Richmond, and we were working all over the world for some major brands. You can see, if you look at Bristol City there, down there, we rebranded Bristol, did the navigation around Bristol City. We worked with Virgin. And again, this is just a brief snapshot of some of the things we did. But when we got to the, we were turning over well over $1 million a month then. And as I say, it was quite a climb in terms of, I guess, coming from a non-business background and having to teach yourself along the way. We were one of the first companies who invested in Alias in the UK and Pro Engineer, and we went digital very early on and became sort of a champion of digital media. So the business not only did product design, but we did digital media, we did branding, we did packaging. We were offering a full service multidisciplinary agency. And we were approached in 2000 by the old business, the Saatchi business called Cordiant, to go, and I was asked to lead their design charge. So I sold in 2000 to Cordiant and became the CEO of their design business. But straight after that, they actually bought my old business called Fitch. And I was then made global CEO of a business that was 750 people, turning over 100 million. And that was quite a ride in itself, because in year 2000, you remember 9/11 happened, and the Twin Towers came down, and our business went from 100 million and halved virtually overnight. So I had to do a lot of things I'd never done before. But it was a phenomenal business, Fitch, at that time. We got 20 odd officers and really an amazing powerhouse. And we got on every single tender list, whether it was Microsoft, Coca-Cola, and we would win a lot of global work. And so going from my front room within, I guess, 12 years, no, how many years was that? That was by the year 2003. What an amazing business, phenomenal teams around the world, and flying around the world, putting together teams and pitches for incredible clients. Unfortunately, in 2003, Mr. Sorrell bought the business from Cordiant, and I was put on gardening leave. And that was, I guess it was one of the worst moments in my life, because I built what was my dream. I built a dream business. I'd come back in and it was suddenly gone. So I was put on gardening leave. But as I did, I kind of bounced back and started a company called The Brewery. And the people asked me why it's called The Brewery. Well, along the way, we managed to buy Richmond Brewery Stores, which was 10,000 square feet in the center of Richmond. And it suddenly seemed brewing was an amalgam of art and science. So I bounced back and started there again. And one of my first clients was the company Eastman. And Eastman is part of Eastman Kodak. They took us on to build their innovation lab. And if you go onto Eastman Innovation Lab on Google, you can see we worked for them for 3 years, won a Business Week Gold, but that got us going again. That got us really on the map and did some amazing work there, building their design function, building their innovation function. And through that, I got introduced to a lady called Dr. Pam Henderson in Seattle, and a business called New Edge. And we brought the businesses together for a period of virtually 10 years. But what that did was use design as a business tool, and she taught me, and through working with clients, we started using design much more strategically. So for Kellogg's, for instance, we did the future of Special K. For Gillette, we did the future of shaving. And we started to work with P&G on a thing we call sizing the prize. And actually, I'll take you to the next slide, because the thing we came up with, which is an amazing amalgam of ideas, is you can kill an idea, but you can't kill an opportunity. And what New Edge and the brewery specialized in was using design as a tool to actually create multiple ideas, and through then using research techniques, kill the ideas that weren't the relevant ideas for the business. So P&G, for instance, used to say to us, we want a really big idea. And for them, they got so many ideas. It was a case of starting to map those ideas and amalgamate ideas and build bigger ideas. So they wanted $100 million ideas so they could take them globally. So we built a series of tools for P&G, and which they deployed around the world, which started to size those ideas and bring teams together. So I'll just hop back, but you can see, because we started to work with P&G again, we attracted more clients, and we ended up with offices in Chicago, Seattle, and London working. And so hence my work, and part of my frustration was I was constantly on the road, in fact, constantly flying around the US. Again, we did work with Velux and some other more European clients, but the real focus of the business was US. I was fortunate enough through the work we did with Hugh and a number of other people to be introduced to Michael Dell. And at the time, Michael, the Apple Air was taking all the press, and he had instructed his engineers to create the world's thinnest laptop to challenge Apple. Well, they managed to get it down to, I think it was 14.4 millimeters. And myself and Hugh started to architect out a laptop using a series of techniques I'll share with you in a minute. But we started to believe that we could get the laptop down to sub 10 millimeters. And as was the way, Michael introduced us to the head of engineering, a gentleman called Alex Gruzen. And Alex, we went into Alex's office, and he held up a model of one of the sketches that we'd shared with him. And he said, "This is unobtainium." And he was really taking the piss out of us and said we couldn't do it. And Michael actually said, "Look, we don't know if these guys can do it or not." Anyway, they threw a pile of money at us, and we said we could make 3 working prototypes within probably 6 to 9 months. So what we did, and what I wanted to do was share some of the tools and design tools we created. And I'm happy to take questions on these afterwards, or if people flag along the way, then I'm happy to explain them in more detail. But one of the things that we did with Dell was start to take a series of key performance indicators and look backwards from now 3 years. And we could see the general trend in the market was getting thinner. We could see the weight was getting less, and the price and performance relatively was again on a trajectory. So what we did was project those forwards in terms of a best estimate, a guesstimate. And then we started to explore if those companies are working on these key factors. Let's go into the market and work with the world leaders. So the world leaders on screens, the world leaders on keyboards, the world leaders on batteries, and see if we can bring those pieces of technology back earlier. So Michael Dell gave us the ability to talk to the world leaders for the components, the subcomponents of the computer. And what we said was, what we need to get market leadership is at least 20% better than current market. And through working with the Panasonics and the Samsungs and the Intels of this world, and with Michael's backing, we managed to buy in to Dell the latest set of components. So what we had was tomorrow's technology earlier than anybody else had. And then it was a packaging exercise. There's clearly a lot of unique IP around this in terms of a hinge and in terms of keyboards and in terms of cooling. But we worked with the key vendors to Dell and brought those closer in. So we managed to, within the space of, I think it was 7 months, we managed to get 3 working prototypes on breadboards, which we took carefully over to show Alex and Michael. Unfortunately, 2 out of the 3 never booted up because of the transport, but the 3rd did. Anyway, we created the recipe then. We showed them how to bake the cake, and then they went off to Foxconn and built this product. Now, the Adamo was probably one of the most expensive computers at the market at the time when it was launched. But what it did, it provided them with a platform. So they took the platform from that product and then used it in a lot of the products you see now. So it became a halo product. It became their leadership product. It was one of the most expensive products out there. But what it showed was how to take a lot of the technology, bring it back into the company and do things differently. So that was something I wanted to share with you, because I think this technique of going out there, working with actually market leaders and bringing that technology back into your own businesses is something that you can get leadership from. Another example I wanted to show you is a company where I worked with again for 3 years in Cincinnati, a company called Standard Textiles. And you can see this is their website. Gary Hyman, a very proud third generation immigrant. His father, after the war, created the town of Arad, which his vision was to make the desert green. So he put textiles into Israel after the war, and Gary took over that business. And you can see how, this is how the business looked when we got involved. This is what we talked to him about innovation and about the growth of his business. And his vision was to take the business from half a billion to $1 billion in 3 years. And I spent a week every month, and sometimes more than that, in Cincinnati working with him and his teams on building the business from a product base up and looking at every aspect of the business with a design lens. And one of the things that we did very early on was to look at the journey of a towel, because one of their key products was all the white for Hilton. So they did the towels, the sheets, and the top of the bed for Hilton hotels, mainly around America, but they got contracts around the world. So one of the things I did with their teams was start to map the journey of the towel from yarn right the way through the factory into the washing, into the transportation. You can see one of the other hotels they worked with was Marriott. Once a towel actually is taken into the hotel, we found out it was rewashed again. And that rewashing was done in order to guarantee the quality. Towels then went into a storeroom and into a hotel, into the bathroom. They generally buy what they call par 3. So every single hotel room has 3 sets of laundry. One is on the bed, one's in the store, and one's generally in the laundry. A towel also, and this is fascinating, lasts about 100 washes. So before it loses its softness. Let's say a towel costs $10 to actually manufacture a purchase. That is not the majority of the ownership cost. The majority of the ownership cost is the dollar every time it costs to wash that towel. So one of the things that we suggested to add value to the customers early on and to create an innovation was take a step out of the journey of the towel and add value to to their customers. And what we did was suggest that we took out the step of taking the product into the laundry before it went onto the shelves and into the bed. And how did we do that? Well, in Cincinnati, we were already working with P&G, and one of their brands is Tide. So what we did, came up with this concept, was called Room Ready with Tide. So rather than the product go into the laundry, which was the previous one, it would go from Standard Textiles straight into the storage and into the rooms. And the distinctive smell of Tide would actually give them the signature, the indicator that the towel was fresh and it was new. So it became an interesting exercise of customer adding value to the customer through taking out a step and saving them $1, because we knew that the overall life cost of a towel was $100 in the laundry, but we would then be able to offer them an extra service. So we were able to not add any cost to our product, but because we were washing them anyway, but we would add enormous value to the clients. So as an example, that was using a second brand, using it as a halo and adding value, using, I guess, another brand to add value to your own brand. Another example of working with Standard Textiles, we had a real problem back in early 11, was the cotton prices were going through the roof, and they'd got a lot of contracts which were fixed price, but clearly the raw materials were going up and up and up, and we didn't know where they were going to peak. So Gary said, what can we do about this? Because we can't just keep on passing these costs on to our clients, because they're just not going to accept it. So one of the suggestions that we made was going back to what we call first principles, was looking at what a towel does. So we started to what we would call reframe the problem. And you can see here, men use towels very differently from women. So we went and worked with user groups and actually looked at how towels absorb moisture when they're used from different user groups. And what we came to the conclusion was that most of the moisture from was absorbed in the center of the towel, and the outside of the towels there was little usage there. So what we created from just this single insight was a whole new product category called elevations, where we took out cotton out of the ends of the towel through examples that you can see there using jacquard weaving, created a bell curve in the center of the towel, and so it felt exactly the same and offered the same drying, but at the same time we took out 20% of the cotton. Now the real saving wasn't just in the cotton itself. If you recall on the journey of the towel back here, you can see towels are dried, and by actually carefully repositioning this towel elevations was also used 20% less energy in the dryers of the tumble dryers, so it became a win-win. So we had a very different story to go back to the clients with. I guess you can see Gary here looking, he's very proud of his father, because when his father went to America, one of the first things he saw was Standard Oil, and that's how the company got named Standard Textiles. So one of the careful things that we did was try to encourage him not the business not just to be about him as the figurehead, but use very much more emotional photography about the product being used. And we created again another product, the world's first hard soft product. So one side was sensuously soft and the other side was invigoratingly hard. So it had a hard soft play, and we call this yin yang. But we also taught his marketeers the use of emotional photography. And very quickly, one of the other things that we did, and you can see if I just switch back there and quickly hop over, we created a whole new brand identity for him, which was not just about him, but the customers could see themselves in it. And it showed them the power of, I mean, just being able to photograph towels that looked soft is in itself quite a challenge. So we trained them about, again, built a team internally to take design as a way of life in the business. And one of the things I said to Gary was, what else can we use? What else can we sell to your current clients? Can we use your sales force to sell a separate product? And Gary, being Gary, said, well, Paul, I've been thinking about this, and I've just got back from LA, and I bought this company called SK. They're a company that does blinds and shades, and we can sell this into our hospitality clients across America on our existing sales force, because they were selling white sheets and towels in there, but this allowed them to sell in blinds and curtains and other fixtures. So I said, Paul, I bought this company for you because you can rebrand it, and we can go in and sell their services into the current client base. So I said, well, what collateral have they got? And they hadn't got any. So I said, well, look, the first thing we need to create is this sales aid. Now, I've got one here. This is the final slide I'm going to share with you, but this is the book we created, and it was all about details as a way of life. And, you know, people have got to be able to hang on the curtains and not fall over. And so this is the book we created. But actually, if I just stand back, what we wanted to create from them was actually something that built a brand in the minds of the customers. So this is a little doll's house. So on the one side is a very modern hotel. It's a pop-up book. And on the other side is a traditional hotel with swags. And one of the salesperson said to me, well, what happens if the hotel managers take this home? And I said, give them another one. So this piece of sales collateral completely revolutionized their business in selling the second product. And this is probably, you know, I don't know, we can talk about the cost of these, but we had them produced in Taiwan. They cost about $5 a pop. And the effect on their clients was phenomenal. I think, and I don't know what the final figures were, but it probably put upwards of 100 million in terms of onto this new business that they brought in, because it completely ramped the sales. So that's my little, I guess that's my little end of my screen sharing. Whoops, where's it gone? And I'm very happy to take questions. But what I wanted to share with you was, and I've got hundreds of these stories I can go into, but just give you a snapshot of the power of design. And unfortunately, it's my power, and a lot of the work I've done has been in the States. And as Nick knows, I've been writing for the manufacturer for a number of years now, but my mission is to stop traveling, which I've done. That's very kindly happened through COVID and the lockdown, and really help UK manufacturers. And I've been very fortunate with my journey, and I'm not looking for to sell myself in terms of consultancy fees. I'm very happy to do workshops with people and help them, guide them on the journey. So I'm here, I'm open to questions, I'm open to help people, and again, please feel free.
Wow, that's one hell of a story, Paul. And I'm blown away. I mean, you know, I knew some of that, but wow, that's extraordinary.
No, I mean, it's not just me. I had some awesome directors. I had some awesome teams around the world, and I have very talented individuals. I'm not a talented designer. I'm not a talented business person. I'm not a talented engineer. But together, my parents gave me something, and I'm tenacious. I'm Marmite. Some clients hate me. Some clients love me, and the clients that love me, who trust me, we've done amazing things together, like with Michael Dell and with Gary at Standard Textiles. So I have to admit I'm Marmite.
Okay.
Some people, but the other thing I should say is I'm not a coach. I'm a consultant. And I don't know if the people know the difference between a coach and a consultant, but I'm not a very good coach. Throughout my career, I've been challenged with problems and had to sort them out. And that's become, in a way, a mantra. So I'm not a great coach.
Okay. All
So
right.
I'll leave
Now
it
you,
to-
you raised your hand.
Yeah, good evening, Nick. Hi, everyone. And hi, Paul. Thanks very much. Fascinating. And I think I remember meeting you. Well, I do remember meeting you at a manufacturer dinner, and it was an inspirational dinner thanks to you then as well. So that's great. I just wanted to sort of get into a couple of your slides. When you talk about, deciding, and you put up a slide with various KPIs when you were talking about the thickness of a laptop. I mean, it looks very easy, but the amount of detail and the amount of work that go into deciding what the KPIs are for a particular project, can you just sort of, talk through, was that a pretty involved process, or was that just as simple as saying, well, this is the sort of thing I want? And, if you were to apply that to a different product set, what sort of thinking and process would you go through?
That's a very good question. Well, because Michael Dell wanted leadership in terms of thickness, and he was driving, the Mac Air had been out and getting all the press, and he wanted to counter that. So the KPIs there, sorry, my earpiece has just come up. The KPIs there were relatively straightforward. The thickness was really a driver. In other projects, they can be very complex, and I think it's understanding, I guess, the gap that the manufacturer or the product would take in the marketplace, and if Dell in particular there were driving on the thickness dimension and the weight dimension. Other companies use different techniques to map out their KPIs. For instance, Kellogg's, when we were doing some of the work like that with them, some of their KPIs in terms of weight control, was fascinating, because it was the first time we were introduced to the concept of signature garments. So a KPI for them, for the consumers around Special K, what garments do you think they focus on as a brand?
Swimwear.
Swimwear, the red
Swimwear was
swimming
one.
costume. Yeah.
Flimsy nightgowns.
Well, the most interesting one for us, there's a swimwear which actually, if you think about Special K, when it promotes itself, it's usually at the time coming towards the summer when clothes are coming off. So they use the signature garment of the swimwear. The other signature garment is jeans, drop a jean size. So they're a very fashion-oriented brand. So insights come out of that, and then become KPIs around the business. So it's interesting to get into the psyche of the business to find out what actually drives those business and what drives those customers, because the KPIs often come from, as I mentioned with Special K, often are interwoven within the brand. I guess the challenge with brands that don't know that in the early stages, and they're doing some work. I was never, in my early days, I was a designer, and I was a very bullish designer, because my designs were always the best, and I was very confident in those designs and would always be very bullish about them and defend them. What I learned through working in the States and through my career was, if you use design as a business tool and offer up multiple designs as part of a research program, you can very, very quickly fast forward the research and stimulate discussions about what the correct product is and what are the expectations of customers and consumers. So using design as a business tool, as a research tool, to narrow down in the early days of new product development, and to find out what the KPIs are, because sometimes the KPIs that you are offering may not be the KPIs the consumer wants to buy or the customer wants to buy. So I think for me, design is, I've done this not formally, but done it through touch and through learning and working with professors and working with big brands in the States. And that was my offer to Nick, was, look, if I can bring some of these tools back in to the business, I'm really happy to share them and show you how to use them within the UK manufacturing sector. But the notion of KPIs that you think are important may not be. And I think one of the things is to in a way, I'll call them hall test those with your customers to make sure that they're the things that they really care about. And if they do care about them, and it can be everything from delivery through to, well, there's all sorts of KPIs you can put around your business, and it will vary per sector. You know, alt testing, you know, there's some things which are just mandatory, you have to do anyway.
Paul, can I ask a question? This is possibly controversial, but I mean, you spent a lot of time in the States. You obviously loved it there. You love doing business with companies in America. Back here, do you find an equally fertile ground for your ideas? Is the UK anywhere near America when it comes to using design thinking?
No. The thing about the States is there are a lot of Garys. There are a lot of companies between 200 and 500 million, and you can quite easily talk to the owner. And there's networks around the States. And my partner was part of the IRI, which is Industrial Research Institute, and we became exposed through work with P&G to multiple companies of that size. And if you're doing between, let's say, 200 to 500 million and kicking off 10 to 20% margin, then you've got money you can invest back in. And, you know, for Gary, you know, he's probably spent with us over 3 to 5 years, 20 million. But actually, from a top line point of view, we paid that back in the first year. So I think the US, what we found, it was easier. And I think being, I don't know if it's being bullish and having worked with Motorola in the early days, but being very direct with Americans was something they appreciated. And codifying the work we'd done and rolling the sleeves up and getting stuck in. Back in my early Fitch days, I worked extensively with UK manufacturers then, but they never had the budgets. They never seemed to be able to. And again, I don't think design as a discipline was as trusted then. It was always design. I've been called a felt tip fairy a number of times in my life. And being a felt tip fairy, you're somebody who is all about style, and you don't really understand business and you don't understand sales, and you don't understand marketing. And I guess, you know, I'm one of the few designers in the UK who's run $100 million business and run teams and run, you know, a global design business. So I think I have to say, Nick, I struggle working in the UK, especially in SMEs with very limited budgets, and that's been my experience. And I've also struggled in France, and you know, we had an office in Paris, which was a fashion business, and it was a fantastic business, but it worked in France and nowhere else. I've worked very extensively in the Nordic countries, and that works really well. But I've really struggled to export design into Europe, into Germany and France, because they've got strong design disciplines within those countries. So America for me was the language. Whilst we say it's easy, it's not, and it is very different. It's very different from the UK. But I just found a natural fit there, which I haven't, unfortunately, in the UK. But look, if people want to challenge me, they want to use design over here, then, you know, I strongly urge companies, you know, to partner with designers. But, you know, you need to, you don't want designers who are fuzzy felt tip designers. You want designers who understand business, who understand the power of design, and using design as a research tool very early on, because again, it gets very quickly into style, and my design is better than your design. Whereas actually, if you use research and design thinking early on, then design is a business tool. It's not a stylized tool, it's a business tool. And from that, then you can test it very quickly and make business decisions.
Can I ask if anybody in the room? Sorry, if anybody in the room
Steve,
actually. Sure. I just wanted to ask the general rule of thumb. Has anybody used the kind of design thinking tools Paul has been discussing in the course of their business, or is design something that sits out at left field at the very start of a process? Bob.
Yeah, pretty much any business that I've looked at. I think you take, first of all, a very systemic approach to understanding where it creates value, how it creates value, what the impact is on the stakeholders, certainly the experience they're having. And that kind of almost cradle to grave perspective that Paul shared, and really understanding where value is either made or lost, gives you a way, in a sense, of reframing your business and optimizing it to create the best use of the resources that you have. So for example, I might have supported the design of a whole business process from supplier to customer service experience in a similar way that Paul looked at the towel. Yeah, so how's it being used currently? Which parts being used? How can you take from one to build another and create more value? So yeah, quite. I didn't know, just like Paul. I'm a mechanical engineer by initial training, and my design experience is more in designing factories and processes. So I was always confused as to when somebody said, "How do you do that?" I would say, "I don't know. It's a bit random." And then when I discovered design thinking, I thought, that's what I do. I actually take a big picture perspective, find out where the value is, pull some threads, understand the experiences, and optimize it from there. So yeah, I totally agree. Great process, can be used to huge benefit and it doesn't have to be a big business. I know my experiences are big businesses, but I've used it on tiny businesses as well, if that helps.
Yeah. Can I just, I know that Steve wants to ask a question, but let me just build on something, because one of the things that when I show the journey of a towel, I didn't mention, but I'm very badly dyslexic, which is common. I'm a left-handed, badly dyslexic designer, which is, I think, quite common in the creative industries. But one of the things that really helps me is mind mapping and using visualization. So just by taking photography and starting to order it, and we build war rooms. So we build rooms and build massive pictures that people can see and share. And that as a technique is something that is, I think, was it Bob just talked about there? And it's something that can use very easily. And not only it helps create team discussion, it helps bring things to life. So visualization is something that, again, is second nature to creative people. But using Polaroid, the old Polaroid camera, or taking digital snaps, or visualizing and bringing things to life through sketching and flip charts and putting things on the wall and helping people see things visually. A picture paints 1,000 words, or whatever that story is. But look, I'm a great believer in visualizing things very early on and building stories. Sorry, Steve, I interrupted you.
Yeah, Steve, go for it.
No, it's just a simple question. Have you ever had anything to do with designing software? So you I can tell you're not the person who sits there writing machine code and things like that, but software, and somehow the way you design it creates the whole customer experience.
I've mapped customer experiences on websites, and I've mapped what they call GUIs, graphic user interfaces, and we've modeled those, and actually one of the projects for Motorola we did right at the onset of the internet was a thing called the Internet Solution, which was everything in a box, a modem, the software, an ISP. It was the first way of connecting to the internet, and during that process we mapped connecting onto the internet to make it easier. So I am not a software designer, and I take my hats off to the gaming industry and the other people. I cannot do any of that, but there's various specialist skill around that. But the use of visualization and the mapping customer journeys and bringing in users very early on to debug things is something that, again, is second nature. So no, I've not done pure software, but we've worked on websites to take out clicks. We've worked on journeys to make things easier to buy. And the thing I showed you here, when the world goes digital, sometimes you need to go analog as well. So I'm also a great believer in mixing things up, because everybody says, oh, I need a digital strategy, or I need yes, you do that, but you also need to build your brand in the mind of your prospect and your customer. So sometimes you need some good old-fashioned techniques as well.
Brilliant, thank you.
Ben, go for it.
Paul, thank you. That was inspirational. Paul, a question. So obviously in doing that work, before you got to, say, design the product, there was a lot of time really understanding the mind of the customer, the mind of the user, and getting into their shoes. How open were the businesses you're working with to spend the money on that side of the project before jumping to the end result?
With P&G and with the larger clients, it's not a problem, because they are used to it, and they're used to failure, because it takes a lot to get $100 million product out there. So they're constantly trying. So they're at P&G, they've got labs, they've got houses set up where people can go in, and they've got videos, and they do all sorts of ethnographic work to actually monitor. I think I'd never worked in towels and in laundry before, and I think that was pretty seminal in terms of walking around the factory and just, with my team and asking basic stupid questions, and being a child again and being naive again about why things, I'd never seen a towel woven in my life. And I didn't understand the importance of a hard towel and a soft towel, but that was the first question when we went in to see the hotel managers. They pick them up and test them. So, but there was no scale of hardness for towels. So we introduced that was an insight. So I think using insights is a very good way of starting to discover the gaps, because in these early stage, I guess, looking at the problem, you're looking for disjunctures. You're looking for disagreements. You're looking for areas of tension that you can streamline, and you often it's the simple things that get overlooked, like the towel. They'd never done. I mean, they've been in towels since the end of the Second World War, and nobody suggested to them to map where the moisture is on a towel and how it changes differently from men and women. Nobody had ever suggested that, because they were concentrating on producing beautiful towels. Yeah. So a lot of it is the naivety of being an external, avant provocateur, nearly. And I think that's the thing why I say I'm Marmite, because some people just really, it rubs them the wrong way. And the English are very mild and conservative, shall we say, and they take offense quite easily. The Americans are slightly thicker skinned, and whether they're humoring me because they don't quite understand, but once they've got into it and they've understand why you're looking at these things and looking for disjunctures and potential things that are out of the ordinary that you've looked at different industries for, then I think, yes, and could I have done this 30 years ago? Probably not. These grey hairs have come by looking at different industries, whether they're towels or computers or many industries I've worked in. And I think what I try to do with my teams is encourage them to look at those disjunctures in a business, the things that don't make sense to them. But again, I've got hundreds of tools and processes and tried to codify this. We codified it for Standard Textiles. We codified it for P&G. And in the early stages of discovery, being really empathetic, trying to get into the shoes of the users, trying to get into the shoes of the customers is a critical part of the role of design in those early stages. So it's not. I could probably teach some of it, but experience of different industries is, again, I'm as I said to Nick, and as I said to you before, look, if people would like an hour session or something like that, I'm really happy to help, and I genuinely want to give something back into British industry, because again, I've been very fortunate to work with some amazing people. I've stopped traveling. I've got my gold British Airways card, and I wanted the last thing I want to do again is get on a plane and go to America again. I used to do that every Sunday night and come back every Friday night. So I've done it, got the T-shirt, and I'd really appreciate if we could, if some of this thinking can work in the UK.
Paul, a question from me. It strikes me that although there is a vast amount of experience, some of which you sort of rather modestly play down a bit, but I mean, I think from listening to all you've said that there are some core principles that can be articulated, and Bob has also mentioned this, that that a business owner, a business manager, a director with an open mind could just look at the principles and sort of just apply them as a sort of blank template onto their own business. Is that too simplistic?
Probably, yes. I think,
Ask a stupid question.
Well, no, it's of course there are templates, but it's a bit like PowerPoint. You get templates on PowerPoint. We can all become we're not suddenly designers because we can use a PowerPoint template. And I think there are going to be some templates, but again, we all know the devil's in the detail, and it's how you implement. And having a template, having the template would not necessarily have linked the fact that P&G do Tide. We could take a step out of the laundry and do that. So some of it is just, it's like those aha moments of bringing things together. So the best template in the world about lateral thinking and bringing analogous products together and things, sometimes you can't do it. It's just having sometimes it's in the moment. And again, the cotton price going up and as deciding to map, doing that, you can't believe that nobody in a towel business had mapped where moisture is when people dry coming out of the bathroom. I mean, that is just for me was like, that would be 101, but nobody done it because they make towels. So I say, what are the things that the customers value about your products, and how do you make that as a differentiating factor? So if I put that in a template, I guess, yes, I can do it, but it's how you interpolate those findings. And sometimes you need... I
suppose it's about having 3D thinking, in a sense, is what I'm guessing, is you come at something from a 3D point of view where everybody else is looking at 2D, and you can't really just, you can't just hand that over to somebody, if they don't see things in 3D like you do.
Well, there's the thing that one of the mapping techniques, and look, I didn't want to go into detail here, but if you all imagine a music desk with mixes with the sliders on them, and if you think of sliders, and the way my mind works is, one of the things I do with a company is find out what the key sliders are. What are the key driving principles of that company? And you can change those. And as I say, I'm very happy to share with you that sort of thinking. But if you start to visualize sliders, and you think about one of the sliders. I mean, okay, Special K is a female brand, but in the first instance, when we started working with Kellogg's, the slider was male female, because they've already said it's a female brand, but a space they could innovate is in male. They put a guardrail around that and said no, but nobody had asked them that question before. Can we do a Special K for men? So by mapping your product, mapping your brand, mapping your service, mapping your business model using this technique that we've developed, you can quickly look for gaps and opportunities. And that's what I'm saying is that once you identify opportunities, then you can use design as a way of exploring those opportunities, how you then solve those opportunities, rather than dashing in at the first instance with oh, this is the right idea. So there's many ways of that's what I'm saying is that I've got some tools and I can talk through with you, but my favorite one is again the analogy of this music mixing desk, whereby you can actually map your products and map your services and map very much like you were doing with the factory example, but then use that as a way of looking at the gaps between them. I mean, one of the other things was I'll use a Special K example, because if you use age as a slider from 0 to 100 as a separate slider, Special K targets people, the women now, between, I think it was 24 to 30. So we said to them, well, why can't you do a Special K for the slightly older lady? Why can't you do a Special K for postmenopausal, with special calcium in it? So we started to look at the notion, just a simple age slider, you can present opportunities. And then, but they said no. So then you use that slider and cross out areas they don't want to innovate. So that in itself is a very simple tool. But you need to get the dimensions of your brand or your service or your product set, and that in itself can be quite challenging. But it's easy to show that technique. Does that
Angela,
help?
Yeah, that was a great analogy. Angela, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just find it really interesting what Paul's saying, particularly around Special K. And I see this quite a lot in a lot of products and things that I use or see on the market. When I worked for that big automotive manufacturer that I worked for, one of the things that I often used to think is that the cars that they design and produce, that to me, they're more geared towards men. And I think, why don't they design a car that's more geared towards women? You know what us women are like. We get in the car, we want somewhere to put our handbag. We don't want to put it on the floor where everybody's been putting their feet. So just even simple little things like that, you think, well, if you were to look at your product more and do more research and think about how you can widen the scope of your customer, surely it would only be an advantage.
Yeah. I think that is a great point, because I mean, cars, after all, they're just identified with being masculine, aren't they? I mean, it's the men have kind of taken it over. Even cars that were designed with the ladies in mind. I was thinking of the original. The VW Beetle, the latest iteration of it. If you remember, they put a little flower. They put a little vase on the dashboard with a little plastic flower coming out of it. And I always thought that was a bit patronizing. It was as if to say, well, we're aiming this at girls and girls like flowers, so let's put a flower on the dashboard. And I always thought that was a man did that. A woman didn't do that. Anyway, anybody got any final thoughts? Because we are down to the Malbec hour. The witching hour at which Malbec kicks in. Anybody got a final thought? If not, I'll wrap it up. And thank you all. Paul, that was amazing. That was really good.
Thank you for the opportunity, Nick. Look, as I said to you, I'm happy to support you, happy to support your the Kaizen. I'm happy to, if somebody wants an hour just to share and just to chew the fat, then look, I'm not getting on planes anytime soon. I'm semi-retired. It's been an amazing journey, and I'd like to put something back. I mean, I do teach, I write a little bit, and I'd love if there was opportunities to help UK companies. And I've been doing a little bit of angeling. So I've got a small portfolio of 4 companies I'm helping at the moment. So if anybody does genuinely want an hour's, and I'll say consulting rather than coaching, then I'm very happy that Nick can share my number on my. Well,
don't forget, it's on the members page. I mean, you can.
Right.
Everybody can
you can do
access
me through
other's
LinkedIn. Link in with me.
Details.
I'm in the process of, and it's quite a hard thing to do, is to wind down my business, because again, I haven't been able to travel. I've got amazing friends and contacts in the States, but I haven't been able to see them, and I've just chosen to try and focus on the UK now. And I guess it's the autumn of my career. So it's become. I'm not selling any services, so I'm very happy just to help.
All right. Well, Paul, bless your heart. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for being with us this evening. Really loved it. Great show as always. Show. Why do I call it a show? But that's the old radio guy in me. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, Ewan. See me afterwards. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you.